Let's get to the testimony today on Capitol Hill. What did you think about Alexander saying that this information has foiled in upwards of 50 terror plots?
I've listened to a lot of testimony, and actually, in this case, I listened from beginning to end, and I felt absolutely no more comfortable at the end than I did at the beginning. What he's basically saying here is we need to connect the dots. The problem is, in order to get the dots, they're going through everybody's records, looking for the connection, the algorithms on the computers that say this fits a certain profile. I want to know why it was that before we had this program, we were connecting the dots and thwarting terrorist activity, and yet, for some reason, they had to expand this out to all Americans. To me, it was a violation of the Fourth Amendment before. It's a violation of the Fourth Amendment now, and they ought to get out of my mailbox. I've done mega trends for years in politics. This is going way too far.
And I think it goes beyond trends. Metadata goes beyond the trends, the gathering of what General Alexander said. It was a phone call. You had the phone number of the dialed from, dialed to, how long duration, and time of day it occurred. I'm reasonably certain that there's an ability to get more information than just the phone call, than just the basic details about the phone call. I'm reasonably certain there's a way, and they may have already done this, to have access to what the phone calls and the emails. We know they have access to what the emails are. We absolutely know that because the individual companies, Google, Facebook, Yahoo, they keep the meat of the emails. So when the government gets it, they've got your emails. What are they going to do with it going forward? They say they're only going after foreign intelligence, terrorists, and treason-like issues. But how do we know that? I mean, the IRS wasn't going to do what they did either.
Well, and it has been abused before. I go back to this. How do you think that Elliot Spitzer was ensnared? There have been employees before that have told ABC News, yes, we listened to phone calls. We didn't have a warrant. We're guilty. So it's ripe for abuse.
That was the question you asked me earlier. If something is ripe for abuse, then you try to create a way to prevent the abuse from happening, but you don't dismantle something that could possibly save lives. We know we have to separate these two programs out. Phone records, we know that exists. It was reported by USA Today. Then you've got PRISM. Spying on foreigners, not a problem with the Fourth Amendment. We can, like I say, it's the Fourth Amendment, not the Fourth Amendment. You can go after anybody you want in other countries. They do it to us. That's why I believe the guy's a traitor, because he could go out. He could go after the Chinese and not us and show us how bad it is. The bigger existential threat is radical Islam, and they are delighting in our convulsion over security. Our disarray among the right and the left is giving them the biggest chuckle, and it also gives them a first-class ticket to the apocalypse as we sit there and actually consider dismantling something that could save our lives. I understand the mistrust, but we got to figure it out to solve that.
Well, can we do this? We had a discussion about this earlier. Let's bring it out here. A great start in getting the trust, or gaining the trust of the government, gaining the trust of us, would be if they make a promise that if some of this data that they weren't supposed to be leaking, or they weren't supposed to be using the wrong way, gets used the wrong way or leaked, that they will prosecute.
Absolutely.
That Eric Holder would get up there and go, we're going to go after you. You can't leak this data. Yeah. You can't use it in a way they should.
That goes back to trust, though. It's a great idea, but do you trust them to actually go after the culprit who did it? This is an administration.
You can never answer that question.
That's an administration who has no problem leaking when it's convenient for them to do the leaking. They selectively prosecute. Nobody is held accountable on any scandal. So why would I believe that Eric Holder is somehow going to hold somebody responsible for targeting or misusing data? I just don't.
Well, do you wait for a new administration?
In the 1970s, I was in front of a FISA court 3 times. In every case, they had specific targeted people that they wanted to go after, and FISA did rubber stamp, no question about it. Very few questions were asked, but in 3 different occasions having to do with Panama and 2 other issues, I was sitting there because I had to testify on something, and they are just not. There's nothing that's necessary about getting, you call it mega data, I call it mega trends. The whole idea that somehow you have to go through all of this stuff to find something that you should have intelligence on a particular person.
Dana, is it silly, though, if you look at the plots that they claim that they foiled?
Claimed is the word.
Exactly, I agree with Viol.
Well, I don't understand why they would lie.
But the number is now 50, okay?
Yep.
Do you believe that they have foiled these plots? And when you look at the plots that they foiled, there's no Greeks on there, there's no Italians, there's no Swedes, and at the same time, the Investor's Business Daily last week said they're not monitoring mosques. So what are we doing with all this data if we're not going to go after the right people?
I do believe General Alexander. I also think that on the advisory board piece, there is an advisory board that already exists. It's called the United States Congress. And all of those members of Congress who didn't go to the briefing the other day because they were too busy, not one of them that went into that briefing has come out and said, holy cow, your Fourth Amendment rights have been totally usurped. And that's not happened by the people who have actually been informed about it. I have no reason to believe that they would lie that there were 50 plots. Now, you might look at that and go, oh, that was an easy one. And why did you miss all the other ones? The terrorists, can you imagine they're sitting back there watching all of us have this discussion? And in China, I will bet you money that they are taking Snowden's information and they are feeding it through state television in China to say, can you believe the United States of America spies on its own citizens? I mean, that's the kind of propaganda that they're going to push out there and in Russia. So it usurps the whole point of the Snowden piece, and also everybody's trying to say that he's a hero.
And it was released at a time when the Chinese were very distrustful, the Chinese people, of their government because of what was going on with Chinese hacking. So it's just a little too convenient.
The question is, if it was what was in place before PRISM and before the Patriot Act, could it have done and foiled these plots? That's something I want to hear specifically why it didn't.
Irregardless, not a word. Regardless of what happened in the past, going forward, Dana, you're right. There's an advisory board. It's called Congress. But when Congress can't put a perp in a walk and put him in jail behind bars for violating it, there's another advisory board.
But they don't even go to the briefing to find out.
Well, let's find out how many IRS agents go to jail. Let's just wait and see.
I agree.
But there's another advisory board. It's the media. And if we're shining a light on them, and if we're getting President Obama or Eric Holder or these people up in front of the camera saying, we will prosecute if you leak.
One journalist can make a huge difference.
And none of these scandals were really broke by journalists. They were broke by Snowden. They were broke by other sources. They were broke by the IRS's Lois Lerner herself when she decided to leak it herself and put a set-up question. The media is really not the one breaking these scandals.
That was a genius move.
All right. Coming up.